The couch is uncut with Callum, Sponge and Bo, talking everything, lifestyle, sports as well, with self-development and everything in between. These boys got what you need.
All right, guys, welcome back to the Couch Critics MMA podcast. We've got our first returning guest on the show, Colby the Golden Boy Thicknesse. He joined us early. He was one of our first guests on the show, and now he's back to talk all things UFC 266. How are you, Bella?
I'm good. How are you? You all right? Not coughing there?
Not sick. Not sick. No, so the main reason I wanted to get you in here, man, we've tried to tee this up for a little while, but, we've had pullouts on both sides, and I'm glad we're finally getting this done. But the main reason, man, is to talk that crazy events that happened last weekend with our boy Alex Volkanovski topping off Brian Ortega in a crazy fight, UFC 266. There's so much to digest. And I guess we'll start at the top, obviously with Volko and Ortega. Did the fight play out the way you thought it would? Or were you surprised that it went the distance, I guess?
The fight went how I thought it was going to go. I'll come back to this, but I think one of my predictions I had that Volko was going to finish a fight. And so if we go by the official rule set and everything, technically Volko did really get the finish, but we can come back to that sort of thing. Yeah. But for how the actual fight played out, I think we game played fairly well for how Ortega was going to come out. We were very aware that he liked to do his stance switches and that. There's actually a time on the Ultimate Fighter where Volko and Ortega, they had to do a face-off in the middle of the cage, and they sort of reenacted like they glove touch and come out. And so as they came out, Ortega was actually orthodox, and Volko's like, what are you doing? You're not going to come out orthodox for our fight sort of thing. And he actually said it took Ortega by surprise, like sort of made him second guess. So we're very aware of like all the stance switching and stuff he was going to do. Like everybody knows, after that Max fight, you know that bloke is super durable. He's so hard to finish. Like he's got that Mexican heart and chin. Third round could be a case, but oh well, sort of that shit happens. But the pace over the 5 rounds is pretty much what we predicted. Like we knew Ortega's not the guy who's going to sort of one shot out there. You're not going to land your big overhand. You're going to put him to sleep. You're going to either need to fatigue him, which was sort of Volko's strategy, and work the bodies, chop the legs and do everything like that to sort of slowly damage him down and get the later finish. Because Ortega, even then, he's such a durable guy. Like we've had, 2 fights against Max and Ortega. He's got bashed the shit out of in both of them, and he still sort of just walks forward like a zombie. Like the bloke's unbelievably tough. But so the game plan worked how I thought it would go. Obviously, there was a few sort of iffy things in the third round, even with Ortega catching the sub. But we always knew that Ortega wasn't going to be able to out-technique, out-point, and sort of beat Volk over 5 rounds. Biggest thing he had, yeah, you say.
Sorry, mate. Volko said that in one of the pre-fight press conferences that he's always got a puncher's chance, but it'll have to be one knockout punch or there was no chance that he was going to outclass him, which obviously we agree with as well. And that's what we're seeing as well.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was saying. Yeah, you go.
I keep cutting you off. As you were saying, there was about 3 or 4 moments where if that was another ref, that would have been stopped. Like there was moments there, that ground and pound, he wasn't defending himself at all intelligently, so that could have been stopped easily.
Yeah, definitely, especially towards the end of that third. Like we said, he had that puncher's chance, but he also had that grappler's chance, which is, unless you're a guy like Ortega, you don't really have to worry about getting caught in a slick submission off a little mistake. But someone of his caliber, you sort of do. And they obviously prepped very well. They knew to catch the left leg body kick or the left leg kick, catch that, throw the left straight down the line. As soon as, if they knock Volko down, which wasn't really a knockdown, it was more like had the leg and sort of pushed him down, but we'll take for what it is. But as soon as Volko hits the ground against Mendes or anyone, he always bounces up off his back and he's straight away in. So they obviously made a good read off that. So as soon as he bounced, they know he's going to explode up. And that's what gave him the opening for the neck. And then obviously he went through the sort of submission chains through like his, was the arm in at first. Then he went for the Diaz. Volko slid out, got back to the guard. Then he got caught in the triangle. He got out of the triangle, got the back, and then he got on top. And like I was saying, there was a couple of times in between where you thought the fight would be stopped. I honestly thought after the third, like 2 minutes when it was in the choke, I was panicking. 2 minutes later, I was celebrating. I'm like, Volko's done it. He's TK'd him in the third. Then Ortega was down. I'm like, okay. They helped him back up to the stool. But realistically, I don't think he's going to come out fresh. Volko's going to. My prediction was a late third, early fourth round finish, and that's pretty much what I thought was going to happen. Not with the submissions, everything, but I thought Volko was going to come on late. But then as Herb called the doctor and we saw all the sort of iffiness going on where they're like pointing this way and Ortega's walking the other way. He's going fucking all these different fingers, getting question wrongs and shit like that. And I think eventually gave him like an extra 45, 50 seconds. It's just some people, without knowing the sport, doesn't sound like a lot. But if you get an extra 45, 50 seconds when you're rocked, that can put you straight back in the fight. And we saw it. Ortega, he didn't obviously come out brand new, but he came out a lot fresher than he would if he didn't get humped up to his stool, if he would have came out on his own legs and that sort of thing.
100%. Yeah, well, that was the next thing I wanted to ask. Being a fighter yourself, obviously, how frustrating is that? Knowing that we've seen Volko jumping around, raring to go for the fourth round. He obviously had his fucking cornerman help him up. Brian did. How frustrating is that given the state Brian was in, given the extra 45 seconds to a minute to recover, being on the other side of that? How frustrating?
Oh, it's extremely. I think the best way to put it is you pretty much rob the bloke of a TKO. If you can't continue the fight, if you're on the ground for 10 seconds and you can't get up, Herb should have said, can you continue? And they should have left him there. If he couldn't get up on his own 2 feet, the fight's called. If he did have to get that corner assistant, the fight should have been called there. Then when the doctor comes in for the medical, there's no need to do 50. The medical isn't to check if he's going to be able to fight and get questions right in 40 seconds. It's in this state right now, is he able to continue? He gets, should be, I think, one question wrong. It should be done. If you can't follow a simple instruction of walk over that way and you go the complete wrong way and you stumble, he's obviously not following. He can't continue, call the fight. But to give him all of them extra chances, like Volko said, it was, obviously he felt like there was something against him, but I couldn't imagine. I'm lucky I've never had anything like happen like that to me. But you got to think Volko went from being in the worst position, in complete control of a fight, into almost losing his world title, to almost pretty much finishing the bloke, to this bloke getting an extra minute to recover. So I can't imagine what was going through his head. Like, I reckon Volko handled it pretty well, but I would have been fucking fuming, to be honest.
Yeah. It was like they just kept asking him until he got it right. That's what I was thinking. It's like he got it wrong. They're like, oh, another one. And then he got it right. They're like, yeah, sweet.
Yeah.
And for people that were saying that Volko got the extra time off as well, that's not the case, because as that's pretty much his fighting career. He pushes the pace so hard that they crumble. But Brian, he was down here. He got the 45 seconds to recover. And then that's why I think we seen Brian come out strong in the later rounds, because he had so much rest. Like people were saying, oh, he's a legend for coming back and still being successful kind of in the last few rounds. But it's because of that extra rest, I feel like.
Yeah, exactly. If you don't help him up to the stool and give him almost an extra full minute, he's almost certainly not making it. He's not starting the fourth, or if he does start it, he's getting finished fairly early on in the fourth.
100%.
We'll jump into, we touched on it a few times there, that third round, man. 15 or 13 minutes into the fight, it's going all Volko's way completely. A shutout. And then, like you said, Ortega caught one of Volko's kick and jumped on the neck, and it was balls deep in a guillotine, as deep as it gets. As his training partner and, you know, being in, obviously grappling with him multiple times, what goes through your head at that point? Did you think it was all over, or do you know Alex so well and you're like, he's not going to tap to this, he'll probably go out, or he's going to escape?
Oh, I'll be honest. Obviously, from training with Volko, I know he's the type of guy, even in the gym. Like, in the gym, he's going to wait till that. If you catch him, he's going to wait till that very last second to tap, and he's going to sort of try and push the limits in that. So when he was in that choke, I was panicking. I was like, fuck, like it's T-City on a mounted guillotine, both feet hooked under his back, and there's like 2 minutes to go, and he's in deep. And I was like, fuck. So the first 5 seconds, I was just going through my head. I'm like, oh, this is not going to, this is it. Like, end of a sort of great reign and everything like that. But then obviously Volko kept fighting, and I knew as long as he was fighting, he was right. Like, if he would have stopped moving, he would have had to be put to sleep to get out. So once he sort of created the space, I think the biggest thing was he also had his left hand in with the choke. So he was able to create a bit of space on that side, then able to sort of wiggle his chin. And so that was just pure heart grit. Like you said, like 99.9% of other fighters put in that position 13 minutes into a fight, when they're tired in that, they would have tapped out without, so they're like, oh, fuck this. They were tapped out or went to sleep. Volko managed to fight through it. And then obviously he did. Yeah, what's up?
Oh, you go, bro. It's all good.
Okay, yeah. No, so I was going to say, so then he did the correct escape, whereas like we knew that if you come up for the back out of any sort of half guard or mount position, if you end up reaching over the waist, you can start there. But if you try and come up with it, it gives you the darts or anaconda, depending which side you're on and that sort of thing. So what he did was he grabbed the waist to scoot, and then he came around the leg. And what that did was it allowed him to have a correct sort of safety frame with his arm. So when he did go for the darts, he wasn't able to secure it all the way. And we drilled that plenty of times. It was coming up out of bad positions on that single, coming around. If you shoot for a dart, you just go with it, you roll. And then we saw even in the fourth round, the exact same situation. Volko came up on the single, pushed the end, and then he had this free hand to even give the thumbs up in that. So his dart wasn't a worry. And then Volko got on top, did sort of old school Volko, where Jeremy Kennedy-esque, where he just punched the living shit out of him. And then it was funny, actually, with Ortega's triangle that he got. I remember I was showing Volko it sort of thing. Maybe it might have been Volko, but I was showing someone because I ended up watching all of Ortega's every like bit of content he had on Jiu-Jitsu YouTube. And he even showed the setup where he has the right hand on the hand and he grabs their left hand like a sort of underhand palm grip. And then all he does is he just waits for the correct opportunity. And instead of pushing and pulling, he just controls the head. And he just sort of flicks the wrist almost and then locks his legs up. It's super quick and it's like his go-to way he locks it up. And then I was just the whole time I was pounding, I was like, just watch Ortega's left hand as long as he doesn't get that wrist control. Then he got it and he got the triangle. And I was like, fuck, this is in tight too. And then he got under the leg and I was like, fuck, this is really tight. And then Volko started to fall, and for a second, I was like, fuck, he's out. But then obviously he managed to create that bit of space. Once he got off to the side and started to go for that mount, I wasn't too worried because I know unless you get Volko in like the perfect position, perfectly timed, perfect squeeze, he's a very hard guy to finish, especially with the blood, sweat, and everything like that. And then as soon as he got out of that the first triangle attempt, up second hard submission attempt, I was like, he's sweet. And then obviously we saw how the third round went. And then in that fourth round, I think the only one he got threatened was with that dart. But even then, that was like very, very little worry for anything because straight away, as soon as he locked in, he did all the fundamentals right. Was talking clearly to Joe and everyone in the corner, thumbs up. So besides them, I think the guillotine was by far the sort of, by far the most dangerous we've ever seen Volko in any sort of fights and that sort of thing, besides his loss, obviously, all them years ago. But I think just the grappling preparation we're doing and everything like that, it really sort of prepared us. We're doing a lot of stuff where it's like hard workouts, it's late in the rounds, and I'm starting pretty much with full locked on submissions because you're not going to be able to escape a submission when you're fresh. Everyone can escape when you're fresh. It's putting yourself in that situation, like he says, where you're fucked, you're tired, you're 20 minutes into a 25-minute grueling workout, and then you're getting your neck fully snatched when you can barely breathe already because how fatigued you are, and then you apply the squeeze. That's what forces a lot of people to tap. But obviously with camp, we're very aware of that. So there's so many things in preparation. It obviously sort of showed through because it worked.
Fuck yeah.
For sure. It's crazy though, right? You mentioned it there. It's like, that's probably been the most adversity he's in a UFC fight. That's probably been the most adversity he's kind of faced. When you look at like the Max fights, like he shut Max out for 10 rounds. The best, probably the featherweight GOAT at the time, obviously. And then he goes through some adversity with Brian Ortega in the submission attempts and stuff, and he's almost more appreciated after having like a performance where he went through the struggles.
Yeah, he was this close to losing. Everyone's like, you're a legend. He beats Max over fucking 50 minutes now, and then everyone's like, I don't know.
This doesn't make sense.
It's fucking wild. He said that as well. He's like, I do a complete shutout, no one cares, but get my head punched in a little bit and fucking everyone loves me.
Yeah, it's just for MMA fans. Like you said, like even when he shut out Aldo in Brazil, like if you know the technical side of MMA, he was so many little details which he used to shut out Aldo in Brazil, like the ex-featherweight GOAT in his home country, shut him out on all three scorecards. Then no one really had appreciated like Aldo didn't show up. He's not the same. Volko is a boring fighter and shit, but then as soon as he bashes someone for almost, say, 23 and a half minutes out of a 25-minute fight, besides where he gets caught and subs for a minute and a half, faces like hard adversity, then everybody sort of jumps on and starts to appreciate him, which is good. He obviously deserves it, but man, like if you're only looking at that, you should actually be able to appreciate like his technical ability, like you said, where he pretty much shut out Max besides the uppercut and the kick that landed in the first 2 rounds. Besides that, it was a pretty clear-cut performance over 10 rounds for Volko.
I rewatched that fight the night before he fought Ortega, actually, without commentary. And besides them 2 moments, he even won the first 2 rounds.
First 2.
Like,
that's what I was thinking too.
And he literally was outclassing him, gets caught with a head kick, drops bang. And then obviously Max wins that round. But other than that, yeah, it was clear for Volko, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely.
We talked about it there. So I want to know your opinion on where does this sit Volko in the featherweight GOAT chat? You know, he's topped Aldo. He's beat Max over 10 rounds. He's beat arguably, I guess, the third or fourth best there, Ortega.
Yep.
Where's this put him in the argument? I think Volko is going to be seriously appreciated after the fact of his career, like GSP was. GSP shut out all these guys through welterweight and then even come back with Bisping, and then he's been shown so much love and appreciation after the fact. And I think Volko will be the same.
Yeah, I think it's hard purely because Max obviously is pretty much the fan favorite of that division, and like obviously he's a likable guy and everything. He had a great run. Aldo's pretty much the OG of that division, so you have sort of different things. Obviously, Volko beating them technically sort of puts him higher, but then again, you have to look at title defenses, even like title reign in that. I honestly think, like you said, Volko is he's gonna keep knocking off these contenders, and it won't be sort of now the modern day. It's once people actually take a step back to look and be like, man, like fuck, what a specimen he was. Like we really sort of took him for granted. Like Mendes, Aldo, Holloway twice, Ortega, and he just keeps adding to that list. I think he's going to sort of cement his legacy that way.
Well, he reminds me exactly of Kamaru Usman, actually. Kamaru was doing the same thing, destroying people, but not finishing them, which Volko, he can finish as well. But everyone hated Kamaru for so long, and then he got that one finish, and then now he's one of the fucking fan favorites. So after this, I think the Ortega fight was the stepping stone, and then the next fight, if he gets a finish, he's just going to skyrocket and he'll be a massive star. And people will appreciate him now.
Yeah, definitely. I think it might have been Luke Thomas who said or something. He's like, the champion's good when they start defining by like, they're saying how their opponent survived. Like someone like Valentina, how Lauren Murphy survived. And like, look at how tough Ortega is. Like, if you come out of a championship fight and the only credit, well, obviously he gets a submission, but if most of the credit is due to your opponent and about how tough they are and how they survive, I think that sort of really shows that you're in this sort of way to become good. Even with like John Jones, obviously people outside the cage is a piece of shit, but in the cage, like he was held to such a high standard. If someone landed a jab on him, you're like, oh, John's not the same than that. It's just these elite guys get held to such sort of like a unrealistic expectation because they're at that elite level. Whereas you've got to realize, like at the end of the day, they're exactly the same sort of human as across the octagon from them, but they just happen to be very good, very skillful at fighting.
100%.
Completely agree. I feel like I could talk about Volko and this fight all day, but we'll move down the card, man, because it'll be nighttime by the time I finish. You touched on it there, the co-main event, man. Valentina Shevchenko, a shutout once again against Lauren Murphy. I'll keep this one short and sweet. Is there anyone left at 125 that you think can hold a chance against Valentina? And if not, do you think the only big fight left for her is Amanda?
Right now, I don't think there is. I think Amanda is the sort of only real sort of option. Obviously, we got Casey O'Neill, the Australian. She's obviously a few fights away. So hopefully a few years, maybe 2 or 3 years down the line, if Valentina's still fighting and Casey can work her way up through, I think Casey could possibly be the one. But besides that, like as we were seeing, Valentina is just a straight assassin sort of thing. So I think for her, pretty sure she said she likes the 125. So I don't think she's going to really be content on sort of rotating between divisions anymore, like going for Nunes and that. So if she sort of wants to reign out her division, just knocking off her contenders, like you can't really blame her. If you're that good, then you can just sort of like, man, what can you do at the end of the day? You sort of have to wait for her to retire and then get some sort of new fresh blood in that division.
100%. A fight I would actually like is if Weili Zhang loses to Rose and Weili goes up. I think that'll be the only matchup that they could sell the way she might lose at 125. But yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's hard. She's just such an absolute killer. Like I think, like I said, I think Nunes at 135 is probably the fight to make, but I don't know if Valentina even wants to do that one anymore.
Yeah, for sure. And you almost want to see, the two women's GOATs just do work separately in the respective divisions and just ride it out into the sunset as the two GOATs. But we'll move down the card, man. This one for the OGs, the World Series of Fighting Days, Nick Diaz versus Robbie Lawler. I'll ask you the same question I asked about Volk and Ortega. Did you expect the fight to play out this way?
Yes and no. I expected Nick to be rusty. However, I thought him being active, real, like, because we know, like, obviously he likes to party and that, but he's still, like, he does his triathlons. He's in the gym, training every day and stuff like that. So I thought he would have been relatively active. So I didn't really watch much promo footage leading up pretty much until fight week was when I started actually digging in. And then I saw some footage of him, like, just shadow sparring and that. I'm like, oh, man, he doesn't look too red hot. And then he had to go up to the division. Firstly, there was no way he was ever going to make fucking 77 looking like that. Like, he made Robbie Lawler look small. So that was definitely a ploy, like 3 or 4 weeks out, I think, where he's like, I'm not going to make it. We'll give him like a week's notice or something. He's still probably going to take the fight with Robbie Lawler in his game. But besides that, with the actual fight, I thought Nick surprised me. At the start, I thought he was going to look a lot better. Watching a fight with footage, I'm like, fuck, he's going to look terrible. But by him actually going out there, he showed some ring rust and everything, but I think he did a decent showing for himself. Robbie, I think the commentaries, though, they were pretty biased towards Nick, because even though Robbie was constantly coming forward, pretty much if you slow it down, every single shot Nick threw, it was very glancing or Robbie was rolling with it. It was like 4 or 5 punch combos that Nick was throwing, and Robbie's showing doing like a sort of Poirier style where he's blocking an elbow, forearms, and they're sliding past. And the commentators are sort of going on like he's on like 4 or 5 hit combos and that. There's obviously good moments where he landed like, I forget it was the left or right. He landed like 3 uppercuts with the one hand in a row. And I was like, it's cool to see stuff like that come back. But besides that, like, I don't think Nick Diaz needs to fight again, if I'm being honest. Like, it's cool to see him back, but I think he's not in it for the belt. You can tell the way he sort of, I wouldn't say he quit, but he just, obviously, if Robbie Lawler's punch him in the face, you don't want to continue and you get the opportunity. No one's going to sort of feel accountable for you not continuing. But I don't think he, like, mentally watching the fight week, him saying how he doesn't even know how this fight came to take place, all that sort of things is personally, it was cool to see him back, but I don't really want to see him fight again, being honest.
I'm sitting in the exact same bucket. I feel like everyone's so torn with this one. A lot of people like us that enjoyed seeing him back, but don't want to see it happen again. And then other people enjoyed seeing it and they just want to see more and more of it. I want to ask, though, what matchups do you think are left for him if he does? I think there's only matchups like you look at Donald Cerrone, maybe at 70, if Nick can make 70, but I think it's got to be guys like that.
Yeah, I think it has to be not guys necessarily on their way up, but just old veterans, like around the same age, same stylistic matchup. Like, I remember, I think Nick was saying he'd come down and like fight Masvidal or something like that ages ago when Nate got beat by him. I'm like, that's a terrible fight for him right now. Like, he needs to fight guys who sort of came up with him, the oldest sort of guys, like a guy like Cowboy or someone, or even like Matt Brown-esque, like that sort of genre style of guys where it can work well with their old guys. They don't have the pop of the young sort of hungry up and coming contenders, and it's going to be that real technical fight, and it's 2 OGs. You don't want to see Nick getting put up against young killers now just to sort of cash a paycheck or anything. So I think a Cerrone fight would be perfect for him. Both guys don't have to cut any weight, and they can just sort of bang it out, and the fans would love it.
100%.
Surely at middleweight too. I don't think Nick could even make 70.
No way.
He was looking thick Diaz.
He was a thick boy.
Oh, yeah.
So we'll move on to our other Anzac that was on the card, Dan Hooker. He had a show out against Nasrat Hakparas. That's the one. I guess I'll start. He obviously shut him out, like I said. Were you surprised by that, or did you come to expect that from Dan, even though the week he sort of had and the lead up he sort of had to the fight? Did you always see it going that way?
I was fairly confident in, obviously, Dan's ability in that. Obviously, talking to Volk and that, like, Volko's always said, since, like, first times, like, really started training with the kickboard boys, is like, Dan has really underrated wrestling and jiu-jitsu. He doesn't need to use it because he's a very good striker, but it's like guys who just want to try and take him down. Like, he's got great hips. He's got good takedown defense. He's got super tight guillotines, as we all know, if people shit on him. Biggest thing that probably surprised me was how good his actually offensive wrestling looked.
Mm-hmm.
Especially considering, as most of us, like, everybody follows it, knows, like, all the issues and shit that City Kickboxing went through to actually get to the fight. But I think he said he was training in his garage for, like, the last 4 weeks or something. So obviously with like 1 or 2 bodies, so it's very hard for him to get a camp in. I thought that might play a factor. but he's a professional. And I just sort of knew like the skill difference between Nazareth and Hooker. Like, even though Dan sort of has lost a few of the last, they've been against guys who are either fighting for world titles or guys who are like the top contenders sort of thing. It's not like he's losing to like rank 12, rank 15 guys. He's only losing to the very best in the world. And I personally think in lightweight, that pretty much top 5 to top 10, each on their own different days. If someone has a little bit of off day and someone's on, the belt could just constantly swing. Like, it's very hard to pin down who's the actual sort of number one sort of champion there, because I think, like I said, depends on the day, depends on the circumstances leading up. I think most of these guys can beat everybody else, which is why when Nazareth, even though he's still good, I think he was just a bit sort of behind on all the skill level of Dan. And obviously he showed it. As soon as he wanted to start really exchanging and trying to catch Dan, boom, Dan's underneath him shooting like beautifully timed.
Yeah.
Last doubles, controlling him on ground. Clinch work was super impressive. His striking, his distance management, backing him up. Like, it was a great performance by Dan. It's exactly what he needed after his last one.
I think so too. I think you're right there too with the lightweights. I feel like it's been like that the past like 5 years, where there's been like the top 5 and then just everyone else under it. And I think it's important that Dan put on a clinic the way he did when taking a fight from someone that's such lower ranked, and put on a clinic to show how good and how well he fits into that top 5. So,
well, we've seen it in the Dustin pot. Like, arguably on some scorecards, he beat Dustin Poirier, and now Dustin's the uncrowned champ. So, you know, he's at that level. And I think, Nazareth was just a bit below.
Yeah, exactly. Nazareth's still pretty young. I think he obviously comes from a good team in it. So there's obviously like a bright future for him. But yeah, like you said, like, you got guys like Charles Olives, fucking Gaethje, Chandler, Hooker, Poirier, and Dariush, and them sort of guys. Like, them sort of guys, depending on the circumstances, reasons you can believe that each of them can beat sort of everyone else sort of thing. It's like that rock, paper, scissors of that division. Like, this person beats this person, this person. So it's just I think that belt's going to be, there's another guy who comes up and can maintain the sort of lightweight belt over the next couple of years with all the killers in the top 5. I'm not sure who it's going to be, because I don't think sort of Khabib was different. Khabib sort of had the game plan, had that answer where he could apply to everyone. But I think there's too many different stylistic matchups, and there's no one at that Khabib level where one skill set is so much higher where they can shut everybody out. So I think personally that belt's going to sort of be sort of doing the rounds for over the next couple of years. And hopefully I think Dan should be able to get his hands on it.
I think so too. Yeah. And it's so much more exciting that way. You know, we all love watching Khabib be so dominant champion, but it's also fun seeing as well it change between the top 5 and all these just different style matchups, and similar to bantamweights, which I want to ask you about. We just seen announced yesterday was the Peter Yan versus Corey Sandman Sandhagen matchup for the interim title there, because Aljamain pulled out of that fight. So I just want to get your thoughts on that matchup. Are you excited about it? It kind of feels, to me, I'm a Sandman fan, so it kind of feels like all is good in the world with Sandman getting a title shot after his TJ fight. So
yeah, I think it's definitely well deserved for Sandman. Like, even though his last TJ fight lost it, but then again, like, again, it comes down to score and everything like that. I think he did a great showing for himself. With this Yan fight, I think it's a dangerous fight for him. Even I'm slightly leaning toward Yan purely because I think he is just such a savage. He's just sort of in there. And the only thing I didn't really like with the Sandhagen, which I assume he would fix now, was him sort of taking them, them few extra risks that he didn't really need to take, which ultimately costed him the fight on the scorecards. Like him throwing them constant back kicks, going for the sort of Granby rolls, where them sort of things are working really well as one-offs. But when they started, TJ was able to capitalize him. They started giving him the ring control and stuff like that. And I think that could be a possible sort of thing where Peter can exploit it a lot more than TJ. Peter's obviously a bit more athletic. He's a bit younger, and I think he's a bit hungrier, and he's more sort of like that scary sort of fighter. So whereas TJ was sort of happy to hold that body lock and sort of sit on it, throw some knees for a minute and a half and sort of get the points up that way. I think if you give someone like Yan your back, you're going to be getting fucking punched, kneed, elbowed sort of thing. Yeah. But then again, fucking Sandman's unbelievable. Like the shit he can do. Like I can also see him just pulling off like a crazy flying knee or a back kick or something like that, catching Yan coming in. So I think it's going to be fucking 25 minutes of pure entertainment. I'm keen for it.
100%. I think Peter Yan's the fucking scariest man on the planet.
The first two rounds, he's like this, so he just sits and
just take reads and just absorbs everything. It's like, oh, I figured you out, now I'm gonna bash you until you quit.
Nah, it's hilarious, man. But I mainly wanted to ask you, bro, because you're obviously a bantamweight yourself, and these are the guys at the very, very top of your heap. And I just want to get your thoughts. Like, what goes through your head, I guess, when you see these guys fights? Like, obviously you're still super young, you're only our age. But do you see yourself in that position in 5-10 years time? Do you model your game after any of these guys? Do you, like, what goes through your head when you see, the bantamweight title on the line?
Oh, I'd be lying if I sort of didn't say that I didn't see myself there, but it's not so much I see myself there against the current guys right now. It's not so much I'm looking about me against, say, Jan or something right now, because right now that's just completely unrealistic. And some guys are like 22, they win a few pro fights, they're young, and like, oh, nah, 3 years they want to be fighting for a belt and shit like that, where I'm like, let's sort of calm down. We're not John Jones here. We're not the outlier. Like most of us, like, you have to sort of work hard and really sort of take your time and perfect the craft and that. So watching the guys right now, when I watch any sort of fights, bantamweight regardless, like bantamweight's obviously a bit more, I'm sort of trying to see more tendencies for guys that I sort of like to steal from and that. So obviously, like, my bigger, even though he's a drug cheat, so I don't really have much respect for him in that regard, like actual fighting style, like TJ Dillashaw, there's actually a few things that I have stole from him that I try to apply to my game because they work well. Even though I'm a bit sort of taller than that, then we still sort of have that same sort of build and that sort of style, so it works well. Someone like, let's say, Sean O'Malley with that real sort of sniping striker style, I watch him to appreciate him, but there's not a lot I can actually sort of take in from my game sort of thing. So I'm going to try and look at, with any division, I look for guys who are similar to me, find tendencies that they do that I sort of realize I do the same sort of thing. Now I look at their sort of different setups. Like TJ had a great one where he throws a jab, he throws a cross with a step through, so he goes to southpaw, and then he'll either steps up to a square stance or step back through and throw his left hook or a left overhand, depends on where they go. I got that off him a couple of years ago. I've been doing it. And then now, once I sort of a better understanding of the game, I can now have different situations where I play different openings, actually like read it, like these different variations when they throw a check hook for your right hand. You can stay southpaw, you can wrap your right leg around their left leg. If they're still orthodox, you can shoot for takedowns. So there's a lot of things I try and take from there. But for comparing myself now, like, I'm just very realistic with it. Like, you put me against Jan, I'm probably going to get fucking bashed. Like, that guy's a killer. But saying that, few more years down the line, I do see myself competing against these top guys. I feel like too many guys, they want to rush it. They want to be like, you got to realize what got you to the dance. Like 5 years ago, I wasn't even fighting amateur MMA. I was doing jiu-jitsu. It wasn't like, okay, now I'm starting. 5 years from now, I want to be a world champ. You have to be very realistic in that. Unless you're a thief, I think you just have to sort of look at the top guys, because eventually you have to be aware that you're going to fight them. This is a caliber that you need to be at to hold your own. But I don't think you should just overlook the little things. Like, there's no point sort of overworking and trying to think about all these intricacies. Like, say, with there might be a footwork, a pattern or something you can figure out that one of the good guys does really well. If you can't do, he might do like a Dominic Cruz, let's say, for example. If I watch a Dominic Cruz fight and I start implementing his footworks into my style, it might work now against people who don't really know what I'm doing. But instead of trying to implement it, I'd rather, because it's complicated, I'd rather get an actual understanding of why he does it, how he does it. So it's not so much like you're just still in the mood to use it. You want to know why he does it, how he does it, and why it works. So that's the way I sort of look at it. Like with Jan, where he does that marching forward stuff, or he does the jab, cross jab, where he swaps through and he drops favorite with it. He does a lot of cool stuff like that. Sandhagen with his like timing on his flying knees, it's just little bits I always try and take away from these guys. But eventually down the line, I definitely see myself competing against, probably not against these guys, maybe some of the younger ones I could see, but right now some of the current champions like Dillashaw and that, like, unless he's still fighting when he's like in his 40s, I don't think that's going to be like a very realistic sort of matchup for me to sort of foresee down the future. But some of these younger guys would definitely see myself sort of crossing paths with them a few more years down the track.
Yeah, and it's such a complex game to learn as well. So like, you never stop learning in martial arts, so there's no rush to it. And I think we've seen a good example with Israel. Israel took so long to get there, and when he got there, he was ready. He knew he was ready, and now he's a fucking killer. He's one of the biggest stars there. So I don't think there's any rush at all.
Yeah, exactly the same with Volko. Like, I remember, I think Volko was maybe, I don't know, I think he wasn't even 10-0 at the time, and then people were like, oh, when are you going to start pushing for the UFC and that? He's like, oh, I will eventually, but like, he still had to get them a few more fights. He had to sort of get a bit more international recognition. And he's a perfect example. I think his UFC debut got pushed back maybe, it was at least once, maybe even 2 times, which ended up being like a full extra year. And who knows, maybe that extra year, that taught him all the techniques to sort of fill in any little holes he had. Now look at him. He got in when I think he was 26, 27, or maybe even older. But then once he got in, like we all know, he's on a fucking 10-fight win streak throughout the UFC. And that's the same sort of way. I've said since day one, that's why I don't want to do it. I don't be one of these guys who gets in super young, 23, 24, off a contender series, wins 2, loses 2, wins 3, and always up and down. I want to sort of have that linear progression between where you can just go knock off each block and sort of get yourself to the top ranks that way.
100%.
That's such a good mindset, and I think that's the reason why you will get there eventually in the future. And yeah, that's fucking awesome. There'll be good insight. There'll be good insight for that for young fighters. Another thing I wanted to ask you about on the topic of bantamweights, man. We just seen, I think it was yesterday, Mitch Raposo from your obviously from Team Volko got announced in Dana White Contender Series, man. And I don't know, I just want to get your take. How was your experience with Mitch in the tough training room, I guess, and how big do you think his future is in the sport?
Poor Mitch, he's a small bantamweight. He's naturally a flyweight. So I think because one of our first sessions on the evaluation day, we ended up weighing everyone just to sort of see like what their weights are, because they had to fight 5 days later. So it's a sort of Craig Jones came up with like, it was actually a smart idea because we tried to use it in our favor. It didn't work, but it was still good to know. But I think Mitch was like 8 or 9 pounds over fight weight, like a week out. And that's what we said. But like, are you naturally like a bantamweight? Because he's super solid, but he's quite small. But yeah, so he wasn't very big for the bantamweight. And that Ludovic is a fairly big guy. Ludovic obviously just held him down. We saw Mitch piece him up on the feet in the first. And one of the things was we didn't realize that Mitch was actually lacking a bit of confidence. We didn't know. Like, we thought, like, looking at him, he was our first pick for a reason. Like, this bloke's a stud. Like, he's like, I don't know, let's say he's 5'5". He legit sets up, like, boxes that you do build jumps. He can set up boxes at his own head height and honestly, like, explode. He can bench press, like, 90 kilos. He lifts more than me, and he's smaller than me. Like, the bloke's just like an athletic specimen. He's super skillful. Like, he's got good wrestling defense. He's got great striking. He's very good at fundamentals. He sort of picks everything up super quick. So he's got like a really bright future. And that's why he was definitely our first pick for a reason. Like, he's obviously, we didn't know he was lacking a bit of confidence. He got him put into some unfamiliar situations. And then that sort of was his downtrail. But for now, he's fighting the, I forget the bloke's name, but he's like the AFC and Cage Warriors flyweight champ. So this guy's, I watched a bit of it. This guy's pretty good too. But I think Mitch is just me too much, especially seeing as like the work he's been putting in at bantamweight as a pro, to actually see him in his natural weight class and that, I think he's gonna, I think he gets a job done. Then this is gonna be the start of sort of like that new sort of breakout flyweight superstar, which is what that division really needs right now.
100%, man.
That's awesome. I want to tap into, you obviously mentioned the Tough House there. I know would have been a crazy experience and it's such a broad topic, but I guess if you could summarize it so we don't go on forever, to summarize it just in, a couple sentences, how was your whole experience in the house and what did it do for you on a personal level, I guess? I
can always say the experience was unreal. Obviously getting to meet the guys, it was so cool, but it was also cool to see like young, hungry guys with exactly the same ambition as me and my division. Like, I was able to train with these guys every session they were doing. So it was awesome to sort of compare yourself against the caliber of guys who realistically, if I had a couple more fights, I could have been on the show fighting for their position sort of thing. So it's awesome in that sense. Then even just like for full knowledge thing, I always talk about it. Like, but I had Volko, Frank Hickman, Craig Jones, then we had Woody for SNC and then Joe as well. But most of our sessions, we'd get there early. It would just be like live rolling. It would be me, Volko, Craig, and Frankie. And that's like pretty much, you got two of the best in the world that we do, and like an absolute gun wrestler and a wrestling coach. So like, bro, there was one time after a practice, like I remember like it was like 40 minutes was like live rolling, like 5 on, 30 off or something was rotating. I think I did 5 minutes with Volko, 10 with Frankie, 5 with Craig, 2 or 3, I think 3 times. So a long workout. And I got fucking smashed the whole thing. I remember walking into the shower, like it was one of the practices where like you're in the shower, I'm like head down, cold water. I'm like, what the fuck am I doing with my life? I'm like, just a full contemplative session. And it was just horrible. I was like, I didn't get to do one thing I wanted. I got like shit beat out of me. But then obviously like as much as that sort of shit sucks in the moment, you come back and look back and it was like, fuck, it was the best thing for you sort of thing. Like I come back home and that, and like all the new tricks I'm doing, like things I normally struggle with, I'm picking up so quick. That's why the last fight before I got canceled, I was fucking spilling. It wasn't so much the actual fight. I was like, I don't care. I just want to, it's not even so much the fighting. I just want to show up like all the new skill sets. Like by the time I probably get to fight, it's probably going to be over a year. And a lot of people still think like, oh, it's just like this good grappler is just going to try and wrestle. But I was like, fuck, man, I just bit off top and go, I just want to fight someone, eh? Like this lockdown's fucking killing me.
Hey man, we'll tap into that. We'll move on to your future now. You mentioned it there. You had a fight that was obviously couldn't do because of COVID and the lockdown reasons, which is we're all struggling with at the moment. A bit of a crazy time, but I just want to know, like, how frustrating was that? Not being able to fight in that time, or I guess how frustrating is it not being able to fight the whole time? Or do you think it's given you mentioned it there, some extra time to evolve and grow as a fighter?
It's obviously very frustrating because as a fighter, like what I love to do, I love to fight. I love to sort of show myself. Obviously, I love to sort of like fighting in live crowds, a sort of little bit of sort of entertainment, everything that comes with it. I love that. But I think it's frustrating because it is like, I'm like, oh, I just do want to fight. But however, like obviously there's nothing I can do to actually change it. Like there's a lot of people in the same situation as me. And there's a lot of people a lot worse off, even in the fighting aspect. Like I'm lucky, I'm 22. I turned 22 in June. I still got a lot of years left in my career. I'm young, I'm healthy, I'm staying fit. I'm still training 2-3 times a day. I'm staying on top of everything. So when things open up, I'm good to go. But you have some poor guys, they might have been 28, 29, 2 years ago, and all this shit kicked off. They might be coming off 2 losses. They might be absolute killers, 2 bad decisions, and they might only need that couple of wins to get in the UFC and start their career that way. But this whole thing sort of shut it down. So they're the guys I really feel for, the guys who sort of needed their last sort of ditch crack, and it almost got taken away from them without sort of any wrongdoing by their part. So it's obviously frustrating, but I'm the type of guy, like at the start, I was like, fuck, this sucks. I was meant to be fighting. It got postponed. The opponent pulled out. Show got cancelled. We went into a hard lockdown back in July, I think. I was like, that's that. I'm like, so now all I do is I just stay on top of everything. Like you keep the weight in check, my training on point. I'm doing my S&C, everything like that. So when things open up, all I need is like that 4, 5, up to 6 weeks notice for a date, and boom, I can stay ready. I can get to it, sort of thing. So even though it's very frustrating as a situation, there's always positives. Like I said, some of the best times you actually learn out of camp is when you're not too focused on a single opponent. Obviously, my last opponent, he was more of a boxer. He had a few pro boxing fights and stuff like that. So a lot of it was sort of slipping punches, chopping legs, coming inside for takedowns. Nothing wrong with that. It's fun to do. I love game planning for people at work. But I also love having that freedom where this sparring round, I can try a new style. Next round, I can try a new style. Jiu-jitsu, I can try new things. I can put myself in vulnerable positions. So there's obviously like benefits to being in a camp, but there's also a lot of benefits which people sort of don't realize when you're out of camp, which a lot of fighters neglect because they finish a fight. They don't jump straight back into the gym. They take a couple of weeks off and then they're straight back in that fight camp. Whereas I actually really enjoy that period. I love fight camp, love fighting, but I also really enjoy that pure learning period. I'm like, okay, let's say I got 10 minutes roll. I'm like, let's start on my back with one hand under my neck every time. It's not a position I get in very a lot in camp, but let's say worst case, I do end up getting there in a fight. Now's the time to practice. So I can sort of troubleshoot things like that.
100%. I think you getting to train through the tough house and the exemption with like the champ camp and that gives you a huge advantage as well, especially training with fucking Craig Jones, shit like that, like Cowboy, fucking Michael Chiesa and all them motherfuckers. So you're getting all that training while some of your opponents can't train at all. So I think it's a huge advantage. And when they do open up, you'll fucking kill it.
Yeah, geez, that's just, I look at it that way. I'm like, that's good too. But the way I also look at it is like, this way I keep myself motivated. Like right now, I can't train at the gym purely because camp's over and everything. Yeah. So like when I did that run a couple of days ago, I'm like, even though pretty much like all my opponents in New South Wales and that can't be trained, I'm like, for all I know, there's some bloke in Russia fucking training his ass off right now. I'm going to come down and fight in 5 years' time. So if I can't train in the gym now, I still need to get out, do something, get after it. Because it's not sort of, the way I look at it is it's not so much like all these regional Australian guys I'm looking at. I'm still looking at everyone. Even if they're a bit far in front of me, I'm still looking at like realistically what they might be doing. Just because our little part of the world here is shut down means we can't train in a gym doesn't mean you can't train, you can't improve as a martial artist. Like fucking lockdown's not an excuse to sort of, if you're a professional athlete, I don't think it's an excuse to get lazy, get out of shape or anything like that. I'm like, fucking like, who's it, Bear Grylls? Improvise, adapt, overcome. Sounds corny, but shit fucking works, bro.
100%. 100%.
And I think it's that mindset. It's that mindset, I guess, that you hear Alex talking about the same. Like, there's always someone working harder than him when there probably isn't. Like, he thinks Brian's working harder than what he is, and same as you. You're out there thinking that there's someone else working just as hard as you, if not harder. And I guess that's what motivates you to keep you going. But I want to. I seen you on that run when I was driving. I think you had a tough beanie on, or a tough. I seen you wearing something on tough, and I was like, bro, I swear that was cool. I got past
it probably was. Yeah, that would have been the beanie.
Oh, it's hilarious. And then I seen you on your Strava on your story, and it was like 30 Ks, and you're like nose breathing. I was like, what the fuck? What is this shit?
That's it.
So you're definitely working.
Yeah, I was on the lounge. I was like, bro, I'm gonna go do a workout.
You're definitely working.
Yeah,
but nah, man. What else have you been doing through lockdown? Have you picked up any new skills besides the training room? Have you been any new hobbies or spending time with yourself? Anything new that you've been trying to pick up?
It's been good. I've been able to. I love my nan, so I've been spending heaps of time with my nan. Like I see her like a couple of times a week. Like go up because I do my SSC. I'm still able to do that down in Big Tree. Like so it works out that way. So I got her place, stay, chill out with her. But pretty much just that. Training the same. Doing outdoor PTs, but pretty much just I've really been into reading lately. I've been trying to do like a book a week sort of thing. So I just got that George Orwell 1984. So I was reading that just before this. But yeah, pretty much only that, which is good because during my normal schedule, like I try to read, but I might get 30 minutes a day sort of thing, purely because teaching classes, training, running around. And by the end of it, like a big training day, you put 4 or 5 hours in. Like the last thing you want to do is anything that requires some sort of like mental intelligence besides like lay and watch Netflix half an hour before you go to bed. But now because I'm still doing the training, but I have that more free time, I've been really enjoying it. So I've been reading like 1-2 hours a day sort of thing, just smashing out books that way and just sort of trying to, even with books that I don't necessarily agree with the author, it's still been like a good way to sort of get another perspective and sort of open your eyes, because I feel like if you can sort of get really sucked into thinking you know a lot about one thing if you don't look at it through like one lens. So I sort of read something on one say, get a topic, I'll read one book on one version of how they sort of explain it, and I'll try and find like a polar opposite, so you sort of see both sides to the story. Whereas I think even though not a lot of people do read, but a lot of people sort of stick to their sort of niche of what they enjoy, and they stick to like the narratives they like to put together in their head. Because I think that's good, but you can also learn a lot more from taking things from people you don't necessarily agree with.
That's good insight. It's almost that confirmation bias. Like if you're looking for things to agree with your mindset or your paradigm and your perspective, then you're going to find it. But if you're on the other side, you're looking at a fucking perspective shift and seeing it from a different angle, then you'll find that as well. So I think that's important. Do you read multiple books at the same time?
I normally try and cap it at 2, but if I do, it's normally I always listen to one, but I don't listen too much. I'm also on music and podcasts, but I'm sort of listening to one at the moment, like Happiness Hypothesis, which is pretty good. But I normally will try and read one fiction to sort of relax a bit, sort of go off of it. And I'll try and also read one nonfiction for like more serious when I want to sort of learn something sort of thing. Yeah. So it's normally biography and then some sort of fiction book.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Because I remember I seen your story and you said any other weirdos that read more than one book at once. Not me, man.
I struggle with one.
I can only handle one.
Love it, man. It's mad. Any recommendations? Book recommendations?
Oh, I got right here. It's probably real like The Alchemist though. That's like
read that.
That's like my favorite. And then I got like Jordan Peterson's. Like I got like a full bookshelf over here. I'm like a librarian here, so I pretty much sort of anything like I don't know. I'm real into. I did all the sort of fighting like Mike Tyson's and all them sort of books, which is like a good insight for what I'm into. But for like general sort of people, like I don't mind like a few like self development books, like Mark Manson, like The Art of Not Giving a Fuck, like The Power of Now, and all them sort of books. Like they seem like everybody talks about them, but there's a reason everybody's talking about them. So like if someone does want to get into reading, like I normally have like 2 or 3. They're sort of the ones I normally say, give this a go and sort of see what you like. And if you don't like this genre, then you can sort of try and explore other ones.
I'm legit reading Power of Now right now.
It's a good book, eh?
I love it, man. It's so good.
It's deep though. It's deep. Like, yeah, I've got a funny story after. I'll explain. I can't explain on camera. It's a little bit too much, but just remind me about it.
Well, I guess we'll leave it with that then, brother. Let's wrap it up. You know, we're definitely going to get you back on the show. We've enjoyed this. It's been such good fun. You're our first returning guest on the show.
Beautiful.
Let everyone know where they can find you, man. It's obviously Colby Thicknesse on all platforms.
Yeah, Colby Thicknesse on all platforms. Just my main ones, I pretty much only use really Instagram now. I have my Facebook page, but lately Facebook's just been so toxic, so I got rid of my own personal page. I have my page manager thing set up, so I can just Instagram automatically post to my page. But best way to contact me for like anything, like most of my stuff will always go off my Instagram.
100%.
There you go, man. Well, that's it, everybody. Colby the Golden Boy Thicknesse, jumping back on the show, the Couch Critics podcast. Thanks everyone for listening, and we'll see you guys on the next one. Thank you, brother.
Peace.
The couch is uncut with Callum, Sponge and Bo, talking everything, lifestyle, sports as well, with self-development and everything in between. These boys got what you need.